I still sometimes wake up in a cold sweat, heart pounding, thinking about the day I finally made him regret it. 20 years. 20 years of silence. 20 years of wondering. 20 years of a gaping hole where a father should have been. And then, in one swift, calculated move, I brought his carefully constructed world crashing down around him. Was I wrong? Was I a monster for seeking such a thorough, public, and utterly devastating revenge? Or did he get exactly what he deserved for abandoning his family? For leaving us to pick up the pieces while he sailed off into the sunset of a new life? Tell me honestly, would you have done the same? My story starts, as most stories of abandonment do, with a void. I was 5 years old when he left. I remember the smell of his aftershave, a scent that still occasionally catches me off guard in a crowded store, sending a jolt of something akin to phantom limb pain through me. I remember him holding me, my small hand lost in his large one, walking through a park on a sunny afternoon. Then one day he was just gone. No goodbyes, no explanation, just an empty space at the breakfast table and a silence that screamed louder than any argument. My mom, bless her resilient heart, told me he had gone on a very long business trip. For a while I believed her, drawing him crayon pictures that she dutifully mailed to an address I later learned was a P.O. box in a different state, emptied by an entirely different person. It wasn't until I was a little older, maybe 7 or 8, that the truth began to seep in, not in a dramatic reveal, but in the hushed tones of relatives, the tightening of my mom's lips whenever his name was accidentally mentioned, and the sheer undeniable absence of him. My mom worked herself to the bone. She took on extra shifts, cleaned houses on weekends, and somehow, through sheer force of will, kept a roof over our heads and food on our table. I saw the exhaustion etched on her face, the worry in her eyes, and a deep, abiding sadness that settled around her like a permanent shadow. We didn't have much, but we had each other, and we had a shared unspoken understanding. We would never ever be like him. That promise became my silent mantra, a driving force behind everything I did. I studied hard, not just for myself, but for my mom. I wanted to be successful enough to give her the life she deserved, a life free from the constant struggle his departure had imposed upon us. I worked odd jobs through high school, saving every penny, and eventually I earned a scholarship to a good university. It was there, amidst the dizzying freedom of newfound independence, that a new kind of curiosity began to brew. The absence of my father, which had always been a source of pain and anger, started to morph into a quiet obsession. Who was he now? What kind of life had he built for himself? Had he ever thought about us? Did he ever feel even a flicker of regret? My mom had remarried when I was in my late teens, to a wonderful man named David who stepped into the father role with grace and love. He taught me how to change a tire, patiently explained algebra when I struggled, and walked me down the aisle at my imaginary weddings in the living room. He was everything my biological father wasn't, and for that I loved him deeply. But even David's unwavering presence couldn't completely erase the ghost of the man who had left. The questions lingered dormant for years, now stirring. I started with simple Google searches, typing in his name, John Harrison, a common enough name that yielded 1,000 irrelevant results. But I was persistent. I cross-referenced old family photos, snippets of information from distant relatives, anything I could find. It was a slow, painstaking process, like piecing together a broken mirror. And then one day I found him. Not just a name, but a face. A picture on a local news site, smiling broadly, shaking hands with a city council member. The caption identified him as John Harrison, CEO of Harrison Architectural Design, a thriving firm in a city several states away. He looked happy, prosperous, unburdened. He had a new family, a beautiful wife, 2 seemingly perfect children, a son and a daughter who looked roughly my age, maybe a little younger. He was living the life he should have built with us, only with a different cast of characters. The sight of it was a punch to the gut. The anger, which I thought I had buried deep, resurfaced with a vengeance hot and stinging. He hadn't just moved on. He had replaced us. He had built a pristine new life, seemingly without a single backward glance. The injustice of it all burned. My mom had sacrificed everything, struggled constantly, while he lived a life of apparent ease and success. It wasn't fair. It wasn't right. I felt a cold resolve settle over me. This wasn't just about my pain anymore. It was about my mom's sacrifices, about the years of silent suffering she endured because of his cowardly act. He needed to be reminded of what he had thrown away. He needed to understand the consequences of his actions. I decided then and there that I would make him regret it. But not immediately, not in a fit of rage. I would plan. I would wait. I would make it hurt as much as he had hurt us, but with precision and purpose. I spent the next few years meticulously researching him. I learned about his company, his investments, his public image. He was a respected figure in his community, known for his philanthropy and his strong family values. The irony of it all was almost laughable. I discovered he was set to receive a prestigious Man of the Year award from a prominent local business association, an event attended by all the city's elites and local media. This, I decided, was my moment. The perfect stage for his carefully constructed facade to crumble. I was an adult now in my mid-20s, and I had my own career, my own life. I had become a successful journalist, ironically, a career that had honed my investigative skills. This wasn't going to be some childish outburst. This was going to be an exposé. So that's the situation I was in. I had spent years stewing, planning, and waiting for the perfect moment to confront the man who had abandoned me and my mother. I had a target, a plan, and an unshakable resolve. Before I tell you what happened next, what I actually did at that award ceremony, I want you to pause right now and comment below. Seriously, what would you have done in my shoes? How would you have handled this? Would you have confronted him directly, publicly, or would you have let the past stay buried? I'm genuinely curious to hear your thoughts before I reveal the climax. The night of the award ceremony arrived. I was dressed impeccably, a quiet observer in the bustling ballroom, blending in with the other journalists and attendees. My heart was a drum against my ribs, a mixture of nerves and a fierce, cold excitement. I saw him across the room, resplendent in a tuxedo, his new wife clinging to his arm, his perfect children smiling beside him. He looked every inch the successful, respected family man. It was nauseating. When his name was called, the applause was deafening. He strode to the stage, beaming, accepting the gleaming trophy. The moderator began listing his achievements, his community work, his unwavering dedication to his family. That last phrase was like a match to dry tinder. As he stepped up to the microphone to give his acceptance speech, I made my move. I wasn't going to shout or make a scene in a crude way. I had something far more impactful planned. I had arranged with a sympathetic contact at the event to have a specific slideshow prepared, ostensibly as a tribute to his journey. As he began to speak, the large screen behind him, which had been displaying a generic company logo, flickered to life. The first image appeared, a faded photograph of my mother, young and radiant, holding a tiny, smiling baby, me. The murmurs started, then grew louder. He paused mid-sentence, his smile faltering as he glanced at the screen. The next slide appeared, a picture of our old house, small and unassuming, a stark contrast to the opulent life he now showcased. Then a series of images. My mother working late at a diner, her hands raw and red. Me as a child sitting alone on a swing set. My high school graduation photo, with only my mom and David in the audience. And finally, a close-up of a legal document, a child support order, completely unpaid for 20 years. The room was silent, save for the frantic whispers. His face, which had been so confident moments before, was now a mask of pure, unadulterated horror. He tried to speak, but no words came out. His wife looked at the screen, then at him, her eyes wide with shock and confusion. His children, seeing the images of a life they knew nothing about, looked utterly bewildered. I walked slowly towards the stage, my head held high, a microphone somehow finding its way into my hand. I didn't need to shout. The silence in the room was so thick you could cut it with a knife. "John Harrison," I said, my voice clear and steady, amplified by the sound system. "You just accepted an award for dedication to family. But you abandoned your first family. You left your wife and your 5-year-old daughter to fend for themselves while you built this empire." I gestured to the screen, which was now cycling through the images again, lingering on the unpaid child support order. My mother worked 3 jobs to put food on our table. I grew up without a father because you decided we weren't worth your time, your money, or your love. I looked directly into his eyes, which were now filled with a desperate plea. A plea for me to stop. But I wouldn't. You talk about family values, but you exemplified the opposite. You were a ghost, a void, a constant source of pain for 20 years. And now, you stand here, accepting accolades for being a man you clear. The truth is, while the act brought a certain justice, it also brought a quiet understanding. Sometimes the deepest wounds aren't healed by revenge, but by the act of standing up for yourself, for your past, and for the people you love. My dad made his choices and I made mine. And in the end, I found my peace, not in his downfall, but in my own strength and the unwavering love of my true family. So if you've ever felt abandoned, betrayed, or like you were owed something from a past you couldn't control, I hope my story gives you something to think about. It's never easy, but sometimes setting the record straight even years later is the only way to truly move forward. Like this video if you were on my side. If you think I did the right thing, subscribe for more stories like this, and please, share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section below. I want to know unequivocally if you would have walked away, or if you would have made him regret it just like I did. I'll see you all in the next story.